Alan Pulido, officially no longer a Sporting Kansas City player.
Thank you, Alan.
Anymore. Thank you. I mean, this is a very, I don't want to say controversial player because, I mean, like, polarizing is the right word, I think.
He's good. He's a great player.
He's a good player, but the question will always be, was it worth it for Sporting Kansas City to spend the money that they reportedly spent on Alan Pulido for what they got?
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank. If you're thinking about starting a business or know someone who is, check out Emprise Bank's SBA loans. It's always good to know your options, and they can be your partner in possible.
What's going on, my friends, and welcome back to another episode of No Other Pod. I'm Jimmy, along with my good yeet buddy Daniel Kooser. What's going on, my friend?
Dude, not much, man. Not much. Things are good. Not in LA, but things are fine over here. I see you got your LA hat, man, staying strong.
Had to represent. You're watching on YouTube. I got my big old obnoxious LA hat with the world's largest LA on the front of it. That was by design.
Yeah, red beard. You're kind of a bit of a wildfire yourself, but just be careful over there.
I guess it's as good a place to start as any. I mean, I don't know what the situation will be like by the time you all are listening to this, probably on Tuesday, because the winds are supposed to pick back up to near hurricane force over the next 2 to 3 days. But as many of you probably have seen on the news in some capacity, the worst fire disaster in the history of Los Angeles, at least in like recorded civilized history, is currently happening. I, as many of you probably know, born and raised in LA, spent the first 25 years of my life there. So this has been a very strange and emotional and upsetting week for myself and a lot of my friends and family. I'm very grateful that my family who lives there have not lost anything, have not been evacuated. They got close to my dad's, a little too close for comfort for a couple nights, and have to keep an eye on it in the next couple days. But my family is safe. I do know many people who have lost everything, friends, college classmates, former coworkers. Homes are just completely gone, entirely wiped out from the various different fires. So this really sucks. And as of the time of this recording, the worst fire, the Palisades fire, is only 14% contained. And it's more than 30,000 acres that have burned. Places that I grew up going to as a child are just completely gone. So, if you can spare a thought for Los Angeles or for the firefighters and it's not just LA firefighters, it's firefighters from all over the country that have gone there. It's firefighters from Canada. It's firefighters from Mexico. People are working around the clock to try to save people's lives and structures and whatnot. So you follow me on Instagram, JCMac03. I've been sharing ways that people can help from a distance if you feel so inclined. There's the LA Firefighter Foundation drive where people can donate to help get firefighters the resources they need, even food, shelter, etc. Because there are, exponentially more firefighters in Los Angeles right now than there typically are. There are the Red Cross. There are numerous GoFundMes to help people. The Humane Society. Not just the impact on people, but the impact on animals, on wildlife. This is going to be a disaster that will take years and years to recover from. So, not to bring it down, but it is something that has obviously been on my mind a lot the past week. So I appreciate those who can spare a thought and want to help, and hopefully LA's a strong city. It'll come back and it'll be better than ever. It's going to be different forever, but the if there is a positive in all of this, it is the humanity that I've seen come from this, regardless of race, gender, political ideology. There's people helping people all throughout Los Angeles, and that's been very uplifting to see in the midst of disaster.
Yeah. And we'll just talk to you guys next week if you want to hit those 5-star ratings and reviews. I get uncomfortable. When I say some shit.
I appreciate it. It's all good. Like I said, it's been a weird week, and I've been glued to LA local news all week, and some sleepless nights worrying, and it's been tough.
I think it's really cool that, well, it's not cool, but I think it's a neat thing that you can you can hear from someone who knows people, because someone like me who just sees stuff, just videos, like you don't have a true connection. You don't have a feeling either. You're like, oh shit, like that sucks, but you truly don't have that deeper thing. And you're able to come on here and be like, listen, this is crazy.
No, I mean, it's what literally, I mean, I could story after story. I could be like, oh, I'm watching the news and they're showing a structure burning along PCH. And I'm like, oh, that's the feed store where we bought my guinea pig when I was 7 years old. And now it's burned to the ground. Like literally places that I've been since I was a child are just gone. Had my cousins now moved to a place a little bit more inland a year ago, they would have been evacuated from their Santa Monica apartment. So it's just, this is tough. People who, and I think the last thing I'll say, because I've seen some people talk about this, because Los Angeles has a reputation, and communities like the Palisades have a reputation where there's people who are like, well, it's mostly rich people, they'll be fine. And yes, some of the people who lost their homes are wealthy people who, it's still very upsetting, but financially they'll be okay. Doesn't make the trauma of losing your home any less traumatic, but yes. However, what I will also say is, just like Los Angeles as a whole, communities like the Palisades, communities like Pasadena, etc., these are diverse communities that it's not all just wealthy millionaires and billionaires and actors and famous people who live there. There are people who have lived in the Palisades for generations because their great grandparents were able to buy a small home in the early 1900s that was passed down through their family over and over, that they would never be able to afford a home in that community now. There are small business owners who don't necessarily live in those communities or do live in those communities and have spent their life savings trying to open these small businesses. So it is easy, and I do it myself at times, to poke fun at Los Angeles as just like, oh, Hollywood, glitz, glam, rich celebrities and stuff. But like it's built on the backs of people who work blue collar jobs, who are trying to make ends meet in a very expensive city. And the vast majority of people who are impacted are not going to be wealthy people that can just up and buy a new home tomorrow.
I get what you're saying there. I think I saw a video where someone was like looking at their burnt down home and was like, well, there's my bedroom. And then they were like, oh, well, the elevator's still standing. And I was like, holy, right.
Yeah. and there are certainly people that are like that. I'm not trying to say that there aren't, but I mean, there are people who their entire life, generations of lives were in these homes and are just gone now. And that's not an easy thing to just rebuild out of nowhere. So
how does a big fire like that start? Hit me with some science. Does someone have to have like an open flame when they shouldn't have an open flame?
No, so here's
the sun just be like fire.
Well, here's the problem. It was the perfect storm of circumstances. So Los Angeles has had the driest record since 1850 this year. There have been less than 3 inches of rain all year long. So you're already at extreme dry, high fire risk circumstances. LA is also a very densely populated place. So some of these homes that are on very small roads, they're very hard to get to. And then there's something called the Santa Ana winds in Los Angeles, where it's basically a certain type of high wind that comes off of the mountains toward the ocean. They had the worst Santa Ana winds that they've had essentially on record at this exact same time. So you had the driest season in almost 200 years. You had literal 100-mile-an-hour winds come through that are less than once in a lifetime force winds. You have a very densely populated area that was already going through somewhat of a drought. And you know, all it takes is one power line to go down and spark, which is the prevailing theory right now, is the winds took down one power line, causes one spark. Suddenly with 100-mile-an-hour winds, that fire gets out of control very quickly. And the reason it has been spreading so easily across the city is either other power lines go down, or in winds of this speed and veracity, an ember can fly miles away from where the fire originated. And it can land just in one little pile of brush or on one roof, and then it sparks a fire there. And so that's been the problem, is if it were just any one place that were on fire, it would still be difficult, but they could do it. At one point, they had 6 different fires raging out of control across Los Angeles County. And there's just, there's not enough resources for that. I mean, that's why they've had firefighters from Canada, from Mexico, from all over the United States going there every single day. And these people are working literal 24-hour shifts. They spend 24 hours on fighting these fires. They get 24 hours off to sleep and recover. They come back, do it 24 hours again, and they just keep doing that. So it's tough, but hopefully, like I said, LA will come through. It's going to be different for a while. So,
dude. All right. Yes. You want to hit that break and then come back and do some soccer stuff?
Yeah. Now's as good a time as any. Let's take a break.
Let's hit the bathroom or something. Let's relax.
Take a sip of water. We'll come back and boy, there's some sporting KC news to talk.
All right.
So let's take a break and we'll be right back.
Looking for tickets for your next event? Tickets for Less is your number one source. Save big on every purchase when you use promo code KCSN at ticketsforless.com.
Yeah, my life recently has been, I got another tech week upon me in this farce that I'm in, this farce play. And it's funny shit, man. I'm not gonna ask you to drive all this way to come see a play. But if anyone's in the area and wants some good laughs, it's quite the ridiculous time, unnecessary farce at Topeka Civic Theater. So
that's awesome. Go check it out.
Wild. I'm more active than I should be. My hips are not okay right now. I'm just letting you know that.
I know we said that we weren't going to talk fire stuff anymore, but I literally just released, or I just found this out moments ago. So you're asking how the fire started. At least one of them says a suspect admitted to starting a fire in Los Angeles. So one of them started because an asshole is going around starting fires. So fuck that guy. But
dude, it's crazy that one person can cause so much destruction like that. At that point, is that terrorism?
I mean, I do know that if there are any deaths tied to a fire that somebody started, that's a count of murder for every single death that occurs.
And then it's mass murder,
Well, all sorts of everything. There was a video going around and this was infuriating. And I think it's the same guy. He was just walking around with a blowtorch, like in a community, like bending down to plants and stuff. And it was literal residents who were like tackling him and confiscating the blowtorch until the police got there. So it's not how the first one started. They think, like I said, the first one, the major one, was from power lines going down. But
what a time! Lay off the news. You're just going to get unhappy, and definitely stay out of the comments. You're just going to get sad.
I'm not even bothering with the comments. So
a lot of people do, and they get
yeah. But speaking of news, there is some major
where we're going first.
City news. Well, I think there's one place that we kind of have to start, and it's probably the biggest of the news that has happened.
Talked about it
for Sporting Kansas City. We talked about it. We wondered about it. It's that Sporting Kansas City will stick with the 4-3-3 formation. No, I'm kidding. It's Alan Pulido, officially no longer a Sporting Kansas City player.
Thank you, Alan.
Anymore. Thank you. I mean, this is a very, I don't want to say controversial player because, I mean, like, polarizing is the right word, I think.
He's good. He's a great player.
He's a good player, but the question will always be, was it worth it for Sporting Kansas City to spend the money that they reportedly spent on Alan Pulido for what they got? And there could be a lot of retrospective think pieces, etc. He's now back with Chivas Guadalajara, who he spent part of his career with before in Mexico.
They'll adore him. I mean, people there love that man.
If you watched the Sporting Kansas City press conference, or if you read anything about the Sporting Kansas City press conference that Peter Vermees and Mike Burns did, there was some pretty interesting information about this whole Alan Pulido process. I mean, Peter Vermees basically said that it was a 7-week transfer process for this most recent round of transfer. I mean, we've had rumors for years of Alan Pulido back to Chivas, Alan Pulido back to Chivas. There were a couple interesting things that Peter said that I think brought this to fruition. Is one, Alan Pulido changed agents partway through his time here with Sporting Kansas City. The agent who brought him to Kansas City is not the agent that he has now. And so Peter Vermees, he didn't say that's the reason Pulido left, but Peter Vermees went out of his way to mention Alan Pulido changed agents. He said he knew both the agents, but Alan Pulido changed agents. So my guess is, while we don't know the exact timing, all these rumors about Pulido going back to Mexico probably coincide with when he changed agents.
Probably.
And then Peter said about 7-8 weeks ago, after the season, he met with Alan and they discussed the possibility of Alan going back to Mexico. Sounds like Alan kind of, if you read between the lines, Alan brought it up. And Peter basically told him, look, all options are on the table. That's fine. But there's some conditions. We are not going to eat any of your money. We are not going to pay you to go out of here. That's non-negotiable. And 2, we will get a transfer fee. We are not going to just have a free transfer and you walk away for nothing. If we can meet those conditions.
Played that game before.
If we can meet those conditions, we can talk about something. And he said for the first 4 weeks, there was a little here, a little there, wasn't a whole lot. And then over the last 3 weeks, it really picked up because we're in between the Apertura and Clausura in Mexico right now. Came to fruition. Thank you, Alan Pulido, and good luck in Mexico.
Thanks for your service, man. I mean, there were moments, dude. I watched their little 1 minute long thank you video that showed a lot of goals that he made, and it really got me excited for the season to come up because I remember multiple times being there in my seat and just cheering so loudly when Alan would, hit a game-changing goal, and he always made it look easy. It was never he wasn't scoring bangers. He was just always in the right place at the right time to score a nice little chip or a good little tap in or header. Like he made me happy. And so thank you, Alan, for that, man. Like I will miss him. I hope we can do something with that money we save. Like he's off the books now. So that's obviously something we can put towards a puzzle piece. And I look forward to seeing us get better, man, because that's clearly a goal here this year.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think I can sit here and say with a pretty good certainty that Alan Pulido was the most talented player to ever play for Sporting Kansas City. Now, that doesn't mean he was the best or the greatest or the most successful player by any means. I mean, if you look at 5 seasons with Sporting Kansas City, granted, one of those was the COVID-shortened year. Another one he missed entirely because of injury. But 38 goals and 19 assists across 5 seasons in 108 matches. So he's averaging 21 and a half or so games per season across those 5 seasons. That's about 65% of the games in a season. It's not ideal. He's averaging 11-ish, just under 11 goals plus assists per season in those 5 seasons. Again, he missed one, so we're skewing the numbers here a little bit, but still, availability is inability. If you're not available, you can't help. That's not great for a designated player of his value.
It's not. Now, let me ask you this. Is he the kind of player that you will keep eyes on outside of MLS? Well, just to see like how he's doing? Will you peek into some Liga MX games and see if Alan's playing and scoring?
Probably tangentially, yeah. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and just follow the rest of Pulido's career, but he's definitely, if there's a Chivas game on, I'd be like, let's see what Pulido's up to or whatnot. And because I'm curious, we've heard, even this past year, there still is injury. Injuries have been if there's a through line of Alan Pulido's Sporting Kansas City career, it's injuries. And maybe that leaves a what could have been kind of thought in your mind of like, if he was actually healthy, what could he have done? Well, there's a part of me that also wonders because, it's been well documented on social media. He's gone through some personal life changes recently, relationships and stuff. And clearly changing agents is a major life decision. So maybe he was unhappy with the first agent and all these rumors of linking into Mexico over the last couple of years. There was clearly a desire to get back home for him. So how much of this is, yes, there was an injury, which I believe, and how much of this was his heart just wasn't in Kansas City anymore? And if he goes back to Mexico and starts banging in 20-goal seasons,
shut your mouth. I mean, dude, come on. Wouldn't you feel so bad? It's like seeing your ex go date this hunky man or something. You're like, God damn it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's going to happen. He's 33. He's not young anymore. But I mean, like, even still, if he goes and has 10, 15 goal seasons in the shortened Mexican sort of semi-seasons that they have. Yeah, I mean,
I can be semi-seasons, man. I don't mind that at all.
They're fun. But I mean, it's going to be annoying. But I don't think no matter what would have happened, he would have done that here. I think for a lot of players, this is just you know what? For whatever reason, it's not working right now. Now, what is interesting is Mike Burns explicitly, he was asked about where does the Alan Pulido move leave Sporting Kansas City in terms of a rebuild. And he said, the build that we're doing is probably over the next 15 months. So that shouldn't be a surprise. We've talked about this is going to be a 3-window project. But he did say the Alan Pulido move accelerated the plan. So now if you read between the lines and you go back to what Mike Burns said in his postseason press conference and what he said last year, he said, yeah, there are some people that are here that, had I been here before, this is paraphrasing, but basically there's some people here and some contracts that are here that had I been here before, I probably wouldn't have done. And we're not going to be able to do much until those are through. There was speculation as to who he was talking about. Pulido was clearly one of the people that was speculated about. This seems to confirm that this is a positive, as you mentioned last week, for Sporting Kansas City in terms of a rebuild, to get out from underneath a designated player contract and to free up a designated player spot, because there are some, I think it was DC United, where they just got rid of a designated player, but because of the terms of the deal, it doesn't actually free up a DP spot for him. This one does for Sporting KC.
I did mention it last week. I kind of, smart fucking.
Like we know what we're talking about. In that same press conference, and this is not a replacement for Alan Pulido, but
you are just spoiling it. I wanted to watch it, bro. It's like 40 minutes.
It is. Well, you should still watch it. It's interesting.
I plan to.
In that same press conference, they announced that, and then the club officially announced Monday morning, Sporting Kansas City has signed 26-year-old forward Mason Toye via free agency.
Mason Toye, dude. I love a good free agency signing.
And this is an interesting one, because Toye's been around for a minute. I mean, this is a name that you should be familiar with, especially if you were at all paying attention to Minnesota United in their early years. He was a 2018 Super Draft pick, and he did pretty well. He had a 8-goal, 3-assist sophomore year, helping Minnesota reach MLS Cup for the first time. He was traded to Montreal in October 2020 for $600,000 in general allocation money. That's not a small amount for an intra-league trade, especially back then. He's a solid player. He's fallen off a little bit in recent history. He played 12 matches in 2024. He played 5 matches for Montreal, where he was traded, and then was traded to the Timbers, where he played 5 times as they were pushing for the playoffs. But this is, it's William Agada's position. Agada's the starter, no question.
It's to lose.
A 26-year-old Mason Toye coming off the bench. I don't hate this move. It's low risk.
Is that what we're putting all our stock in? Is William, by the way, put some respect on this man's name. He's an adult now. That Willie is for the birds. William Agada. Are we saying that he's the guy up top? That's who we're going with? Like, there's no other signings that could come in?
Well, no. Mike Burns did say the number 9 is still in play. Now that Pulido is gone, the number 9 is still in play. He did kind of say that the 10, so that attacking midfielder and a winger,
their goal,
are still the 2 top priorities.
Of course.
But a number 9 is still in play. Now, what's interesting is if you look at some people like Matthew Doyle, who is obviously well known for his NLS analysis on MajorLeagueSoccer.com and otherwise, he's had some thoughts on Sporting Kansas City and Agada. And he said, in 3,300 MLS minutes, which is about a full MLS regular season if you were to play every minute of the season. So William Agada has played 3,300 MLS minutes, and in that time, he scored 21 goals and 5 assists. And if you look at his underlying stats, that's not a fluke. Doyle says, quote, he's basically a DP caliber goal scorer. Sporting should obviously bring in depth behind them, but just as obviously they should not use one of their high-end acquisition devices on this spot. And you look at the percentile, this is on Blue Sky, I'm looking at this. He's in the 98th percentile in non-penalty XG, 98th percentile in shots, 75th in assists, 85th in non-penalty goals, 95th percentile in non-penalty expected goals plus expected assists. 76th percentile in shots created, 89th percentile in pass completion. Agada is a very, very, very good player. 94th percentile in touches in the attacking penalty area. Let him start. Don't have Alan Pulido breathing down his neck behind him, and let's see what Agada can do.
I think so. Absolutely. There were moments when it's like, dude, this guy is hungry.
Mm-hmm. How many times last year when Pulido was injured or not playing and it was William Agada up top, did we look at him like, damn, we actually look like we're getting chances. We actually look like we're starting to score goals. Now, the weird thing with Agata is sometimes he misses the easy goal and then makes the hard goal look like nothing. And that's the thing where if you can just put this together, then yeah.
Can we get a collection of how many times he hit the post? Like, can we just get a minute-long video of dong, dong,
Right.
pong?
It's almost unbelievable, honestly.
Yeah. Headers into the post, kicking the ball into the post, like him running into the post. Like,
Right.
It's pretty crazy.
But the fact that he's getting in those positions and getting shots off is more than Pulido could say last year.
Yeah, you're right.
For sure.
Yeah.
So
I would say there were even times, though, that Willie maybe could have made an extra pass and like hit Eric Tommy for an open one. You know, there's things like that he could really work on too. And even the women's side, Casey Curran, they have some things like that with Chawinga. So it's like strikers want to score, obviously. It is what it is.
Yeah, when you're confident and you know that you can do it, there are some times where you're a little too selfish. And then
you're not looking for your open man, you know?
Right. And you know what? Honestly, that's fine. You know, you're not going to be that good unless you are confident in your abilities. So if he can put it together, and he's still young, man. I mean, this is not like a 30-year-old player. He's 25.
Yeah.
He was 23 and 24 in his first 2 years here with Sporting Kansas City. So
he's still on his parents' insurance, probably.
He can be for now. Let's see what happens in a month.
Yeah.
But I mean, he's just entering into his prime years. So if Agata can continue on that trajectory, and if we can get a quality number 10 to put behind him that can create and pull strings and find him, and then maybe Tommy's out on the winger to start with Daniel Shallowy for now, but they're also looking for another winger, and then you see what Afrifa and Elenis Vargas can do in terms of their trajectory and improvement this year.
You got the seeds here. You got Willie Agata as this seed. You got the water over here of Daniel Shallowy. You got the topsoil of Eric Tommy. Agata could be a beautiful freaking flower, bro. Yeah, I know you like that analogy. I just pulled it out of nowhere, and I love it. You clip it.
So I'm excited. I mean, do you agree with Doyle in that the way that Agata's performed now, you wouldn't worry about going to sign a designated player striker? Like, I think they're going to probably sign another striker, but like it doesn't have to be a multi-million-dollar signing.
No, it doesn't have to splash, dude. It doesn't have to break the bank. Like we're scared right now. We're a little timid. We're a little tentative as fans to be like, don't mess this up, Mike Burns. And Mike is probably well aware of that. Hey, I don't want to mess this up, folks. So I think they're very much, dipping a toe in and seeing how it feels.
I mean, they're saying the right things. Again, They've said the right things for the past handful of months, which is different than Sporting has in the past. They've said they've extended offers and are in negotiations with players. Nothing's come to fruition yet, but their expectation is people are coming.
They used to just bone us over and over and then give us cab fare.
I don't like that you said that.
Now
I said the expectation is people are coming.
You shouldn't have said that. That's on you. No. And now they're spooning us a little bit. They're spooning us. They're loving us. They're cuddling us. It feels nice. Before it was like, yeah, have a nice night.
So, I mean,
how's your face turning red? You can't turn any redder. What is this? Adjust the color on your tent.
That's right. One other new signing that they did sign is a 19-year-old midfielder, Jacob Bartlett. He's a homegrown player. He signed an MLS contract through 2027 with options in 28 and 29. He obviously joins 16-year-olds Ian James and Jack Courtcamp. I mean, he's born and raised in Kansas City. He's a defensive midfielder. He can also play on the back line. I mean, this is a guy who there's some potential here. And
I think he's a great speaker. For a young kid, he's talking at this press conference, and I'm like, Jacob, look at you. Like there's no way you're this trained already, man. Or I'm a Notre Dame kid, so maybe they have a hand in that, but I like him a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he played for one season, I want to say, for Notre Dame. And what's interesting is, Burns was asked about this, and he goes, I only like signing homegrown players that can eventually contribute to the first team. I don't want to sign homegrown players just to sign homegrown players. So these people that are being signed right now, and I think there's, maybe a little bit of myself included, it's hard to get overly excited about homegrown signings because outside of Jake Davis, there really hasn't been a homegrown signing that's made that much of an impact since Gianluca Buzio. There's been some myth.
Got me excited too, man. Jake's.
Whew. So now we got Jake and Jacob. Yeah. And so it's, this is these are depth pieces for now. These homegrown players that they're going to start with SKC2 probably, but they're locking them down now, and we'll see them in probably some Open Cup or whatnot. Maybe CONCACAF Champions Cup, depending on how Peter wants to play that one. But hey, I'm excited to see these guys continue to get better, and hopefully. And Burns said he's very bullish on the academy in general right now, and they're he's very excited about it. They sees a lot of potential. So they're really they're really excited about the early budding stages of this rebuild.
I get that. Yeah, our expectations should not be crazy high right now. We're just going on this ride, seeing where we go. You know what I mean? It feels like the start of a new phase of the MCU, where you're like, let's let them cook. Let's see what happens.
You gotta see what happens.
I also love our goalkeeper camp, court camp, and post camp.
Mm-hmm. All the camps
and Shayway camp. It should be
like
kind of wild.
Yeah, no, I mean this is interesting. I mean, this is Alan Pulido, the transfer there. That's kind of like the post credits stinger at the end of the first movie, where it's like getting ready for it, and then it comes up and it's like, oh, by the way, Pulido's been transferred, and you're like, what?
Pulido, and you're like, been snapped to dust.
You're like, what's next? And you're like, I don't know. I got to wait 2 years until the next movie comes out.
Yep. But man, that's funny.
But I mean, outside of stuff on the field, off the field, Burns says they've hired a domestic scout. They're hiring an SKC2 coach. They're interviewing for an assistant sporting director position. They're adding international scouts. Peter Vermees said they are overwhelmed with the applications for assistant coaches that they've got for Zoran's spot, who, by the way, it sounds like Zoran left of his own accord. There wasn't any bad blood or anything there.
Was that right? That's what I said.
That's what, he said, Zoran just decided to hang it up and retire.
Well, that's how it sounded. Oh, so he's retiring.
Yeah, he just said, Peter said, Zoran decided to hang it up, is what Peter said.
I mean, maybe we'll see Zoran pop up somewhere. I mean, if he's going to retire, it would have said chooses to retire, right?
Maybe.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know. I mean, this is, I'm more excited after the Pulido transfer, and I'm more excited after watching this press conference than I was at the end of last season, because I think we knew there was going to be a rebuild starting this season, but there were some things that locked us into some difficult contracts. And one of those major milestones is now out of the way. And they, if you remember, MLS has changed the roster mechanisms a little bit this year.
Again?
The U22 initiative, you could have 3 designated players and you could have 3 U22 players before. Now you can still do 3 DPs and 3 U22s, or you can have 2 designated players and 4 U22 players. And a U22 player, if you remember, you can have a transfer fee associated with them. Could be whatever you want. It could be $100 million transfer fee. That's fine. Their maximum budget charge has to be, I think it's $750,000 this year and change. It's whatever the max budget charge is for the actual roster, but they only count as $150,000 or $200,000 toward your salary cap. Mm-hmm. So basically, it's young players that you have high potential for, that you think are potentially DP level worthy players in some sense, but they only count a very small amount toward your salary charge. So there's some advantages. If you want to go the 2 DP route and 4 U22s, you could have a young, talented team that gives you some more money to spend elsewhere in the roster to fill it out. So it could be interesting if they decide to do that. Sporting hasn't decided whether they want to go, which route they want to go. But they said, we've extended offers to players. We have not closed any details on a designated player or U22 player yet, but that is the objective still for this window, end quote. So they want it. We'll see.
Yeah.
They're not going to rush it. They did talk over and over about preaching patience, and they're not going to sign somebody just to sign somebody, but
you got to keep patience. And while our roster might not look like heavy hitters, I will guarantee you our roster is full of people that Peter Vermees likes, in the sense of they fucking hustle, dude. If you hustle for Peter Vermees and you put everything out there, you will play. That is why Kyrie Shelton's still here, baby, because that is one of the hardest workers on that field. And everyone just focus on his mistakes. And it's like, there's good shit there too, I assure you.
Right. Well, and I mean, Peter, it was pretty clear that, like, there were times last year where Peter was just totally over that roster because there were people that were not competing in the way that he wanted them to compete. He said they haven't decided on a captain yet this year. He needs to see more. He said he's, quote, looking for someone to show some cojones in preseason. So the captain needs some cojones, according to Peter.
Okay.
And we don't know.
Jake Davis was asked about if he would want his name into that hat for captain.
Yeah.
I mean, he's been here a long time, and it's like makes sense. At some point, maybe.
I mean, if you look at the players who are still on this team that, have been around for a minute, Jake is starting to get there. I mean, Daniel Shallowy, longest tenured player, I think, probably. Kyrie's been around for a while. Eric Tommy is a potential captain, depending on how much he plays. I mean, these are, but I mean, outside of them, who else is it going to be? I don't know yet.
I don't know, man. It's pretty wild to think about. I mean, Shallowy's kind of the main one that comes to mind. I mean, that's the easy, and Tommy has as well. So, I mean, those are probably the main two, I would say.
I mean, there's a part of me that says, like, Tommy feels like he's got the disposition for a captain, like that German, like, I don't give a fuck, I'm just going to tell it to you straight mentality.
Would run through a wall for that man.
Right. So, like, if that man starts giving you a pep talk, or if somebody needs to go talk to the referee, like,
or he DJs in the locker room, we've seen that.
Tommy feels like that guy. So we'll see.
I like him, dude. I like Eric Tommy a lot. I'd love to get him on here and open him up a little bit because he seems a little strict at times. You know what I mean? It'd be fun to have a little fun.
We'll try to do that. That'd be fun. I know we can make that happen. But speaking of Eric Tommy, he said, quote, "It's clear our roster is not complete." Like, he knows that this isn't where it needs to be. So, again, very honest, open answers from people. And that's not the type of speak that you typically get in a locker room. Usually it's, we're confident in the guys that we have here. No matter who's out there, we think we can compete. And some people are just like, fuck it, we're not good enough. So
I feel you.
Now, there is probably the most interesting rumor that has come up of the season so far is this just started breaking Monday morning. There is a rumor from a Spanish website called Diario AS that Kansas City is looking for, quote, their own Ricky Puig. And it is linking Sporting Kansas City to a 20-year-old midfielder for Barcelona B named Unai Hernandez. And supposedly, Barcelona is asking between 2 and 4 million euros. But Hernandez is 20 years old. So this could be a U22 player, as long as his salary is under $750,000 a year. He's out of contract in the summer, but other teams are reportedly interested. So he's scored 9 goals and 3 assists in 19 appearances in 2024 for Barca B. So, I mean, this is a young, talented, attacking midfielder that fits in that U22 initiative. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I'm Unai Hernandez expert by any means. But, I mean, you can go online and you can find some highlight videos of him. I mean, Casey Soccer Journal has put some stuff up and whatnot. And there's certainly potential. And if he's a Barcelona B player, I mean, that's just like the Ricky Puig pattern. So I'm excited about this, even if it's just a rumor right now. But I mean, there's potential here for Sporting KC to get a really potentially good attacking midfielder sooner rather than later. I'm watching some of his highlights right now, and he looks very technically gifted with the ball. So
does that not get you excited to hear about that? I mean, it's nothing concrete right now, but it's like, man, just to be in a conversation like that is always kind of gets the shoulders going a little bit, gets you a little jazzed.
Mm-hmm. And there's this is an attacking midfielder, but there was another Catalonian midfielder that Sporting Kansas City had once upon a time that was pretty successful that we enjoyed by the name of Ilie Sanchez. So if we can get another midfielder of the ilk, of the quality, of hopefully of the just genuinely good personage of Ilie Sanchez, then that'd be pretty cool. But the highlights I'm watching as we speak right now, it's got good finishing quality, some very, very smart passing technique, and he's just a creative attacking midfielder. So if he can bring this to MLS, this could be a very successful signing for Sporting Kansas City. So We'll see.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I don't know. But I mean, overall, I guess that's I was going to say my favorite part of the press conference. Our buddy Chad Smith over at KC Soccer Journal, he's got a long and funny history, I would say, of asking Peter Vermes questions that Peter does not always appreciate, because Chad is very brave in how he asks some of his questions. And one time Peter said, "I know you hate me," to Chad's face.
Peter said that to Chad?
Yep.
Oh, shit. What'd Chad say? How'd you know?
But Chad was the one who asked Mike Burns the question about staffing updates and scouts and everything. And so Chad asks, what's the status update of the assistant sporting director, scouts, etc. And Mike Burns goes, "It's a good question." And Peter Vermes goes, "Actually, that's a great question," and then makes like a shocked face, kind of mocking the fact that Chad asked a great question, and Peter thought it was funny that he got a great question from Chad. So
no,
I just think it's fun. I mean, honestly,
it's all jest, right? We're all just playing.
It's if anything, like if I were Chad, and Chad, if you're listening to this, I would feel good about this, because that means that Peter feels comfortable enough to like joke around with you.
Nah, man, Chad's one of the nicest dudes I've ever met. Very friendly. I can't imagine him letting something like that get him down. He'd probably take it in jest.
No, he was playing. He thought it was funny. He was playing along with it. But I just think it was funny. So shout out to Chad, and good question, because I got a good answer. But overall, I mean, that's the highlights of the press conference. It's the highlights of the news this week. But like, where does, as things stand now, and we're about a month and change from our first competitive game against Inter Miami, how are you feeling about the future of Sporting Kansas City now compared to, let's say, at the end of last season?
I mean, I don't know. It feels kind of the same right now, but I mean, but also, if you say, have you taken a step forward or back, if you had to choose one, it's definitely in the right direction.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think I can sit here and say, I know for a fact things are going to get fixed, and 2 years from now we're going to be MLS Cup contenders.
Yeah.
But I would rather be in the position we're in now than the position we were in at the end of the season, especially in terms of roster and everything. It sucks to see guys like Emilia and Johnny Russell go. I mean, I will forever have immeasurable amounts of respect for those guys, both on and off the field. It just is unfortunate that sometimes in sports, tough decisions have to be made in terms of roster. And Peter, I think, is taking some good steps to identify some maybe blind spots that he has. And Mike Burns so far has made some good decisions and some of the stuff that they've done. And we'll see if it keeps going. But
totally,
I'm looking forward to what's to come for this team. I think, for all we know, a week from now, when we're recording the next podcast, there could be a new MLS or a Sporting Kansas City signing. Unai Hernandez could be a Sporting KC player. Who knows?
That's not an outrageous comment, because I mean, they're now going to South Florida for preseason stuff, and they would obviously love to get someone into the team and have a preseason with them. I mean, because you always see players come in later and they don't really have a preseason. Now they got to kind of get in better shape and sporting fit, as they call it. So it's very possible we could see something
for sure. Absolutely. Outside of SKC, is there any other SKC stuff you want to talk about this week?
No,
majority of it.
No, I don't think so.
The only other thing I was going to mention really before we hang it up this week is this weekend, the U.S. men's national team is playing 2 January friendlies, or there's the first of 2 January friendlies. They're playing Venezuela at Inter Miami's stadium. It's Saturday at 2 p.m. Central on TNT and Max and Peacock and all that stuff. There's 23 MLS players for Pochettino in this window. And then, after Venezuela, they're going to take on Costa Rica in Orlando. But I mean, these are friendlies, but a lot of MLS players that are looking to get back into the national team fold. I mean, how much interest do you have in seeing where this team is at with the amount of MLS players that they have this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? I don't know, man. I don't put a lot into friendlies. I'm too competitive, I think. So I get a little more excited and stake in the game. I think most people probably like that. I don't know why I'm acting like that's a big deal. But I will probably not watch because the Chiefs are playing later that afternoon.
Man, that's true. That is true. I think the hard thing with friendlies is, I mean, it's a good and bad, because one, you got to see a lot of players that like you maybe don't normally get to see, and see if are they progressing, is there a chance that they can actually make some noise in the actual main roster. But like I can't sit here and like I can look at this US roster and be like, oh yeah, this is clearly like a C or a D team, and I can get excited about potential that I see on the field from there. But I can't look at Venezuela's roster and tell you, I'm sure it's the same for them. So this isn't, I'm not able to sit here and I think it's hard to extrapolate too much from friendlies like this of, they did well, so that means XYZ, because I'd be lying if I sat here and said I could tell you that, oh yeah, they did well against Venezuela's A team. So not how that works.
Precisely. It goes back to the same way like the Broncos played the Chiefs in their final game. Like,
right.
You can't take much away from that at all.
Right. So I think it's interesting, and I'll probably have it on a screen while I got the NFL playoffs going on. But it's not. This isn't like a World Cup qualifier. I mean, not that U.S. doesn't have to qualify for the 26th World Cup because we're hosting, but
yay,
not a competitive. It's not a competitive match. And hopefully this changes under Poch. I mean, I don't blame him for this window necessarily, but I'd like to see us play some friendlies against non-CONCACAF and lower tier CONMEBOL teams. Like, let's get back to playing some friendlies against European teams that actually challenge us a bit, like a friendly against the Netherlands, or a friendly against Germany, or a friendly against Spain. That, like, those are the teams we're going to have to beat in the World Cup anyway. So if you beat up on Costa Rica, that's all well and good until you get trounced by Germany in the World Cup. So
good point.
But that's about all I got this week. You got anything else for our good listeners?
No, that's it, man. Free agency's going on now. Obviously, teams are signing people, man. Joseph Martinez is going to San Jose. That's kind of weird.
We didn't even talk about that. And then Chicho Arango also going to San Jose in the transfer. San Jose, there.
Look out for them, dude. I mean, Bruce Arena coming in, thinking he's, Joao Paulo staying with Seattle. It's exciting. I don't know. San Jose, dude, they were the worst team. They might not be the worst next year.
They're making some noise. We'll see. I mean, Joseph didn't have a great year last year, but if he can be, even 60, 70% of the Joseph of old, and now that he's got Chicho to play with him, I mean, I don't know. Watch out for San Jose. Bruce might still have a trick up his sleeve.
And Seattle's looking good too, man. In the
Seattle looked real good.
Freaking off season here, so
especially since Ricky Puig is out for probably the entire year with his ACL.
Something we didn't talk about? Did you hear about the Apple TV Plus 8-part documentary event?
Oh yeah.
So
it was in quite a bit of the trailer.
Okay, I haven't watched the trailer yet, but it's called Onside.
Yeah,
and I think it's going to be very similar to that Formula One show on Netflix, Drive to Survive. Great show, by the way, if you ever watch it. And I'm excited about this, man. I think this will give us a really cool, behind the scenes thing. Oh, it's actually from producers from the Formula One series. Yeah. So that makes sense, I guess.
You got a good eye. You're like, man, this looks like Drive to Survive.
Yeah. So I don't know. Apple obviously has a lot of soccer stuff on there. This will just add to it. And it's like 8 episodes, man. It's going to be great.
I mean, that's good, because part of the Apple deal was there was supposed to be the opportunity for more content like this. And if we're being honest,
there was, but it was messy stuff.
It was messy stuff, and individual club stuff was lacking. I felt like there was more sporting stuff before the Apple deal than after. I think they probably put the kibosh on it and
go in there and look at all those little snippets they had.
Yeah, and last year sporting the Behind the Shield, like they tried, and those were good.
Sure,
I enjoyed those. But hopefully we'll get more stuff like that going forward.
Things like that cost money and take time, and I get that. You only have so much of both.
Yeah. So that's about all we got this week.
Take us home, James.
Thank you again for sticking with us through this offseason. Try to get maybe we'll try to get Eric Tommy on here. We'll see. I mean, they're getting ready for preseason, but we'll see what we can
tease me with a good time.
Make sure you follow us on social media at No Other Pod, at Dan Kooser, at JCMag03. Shoot us an email, nootherpod@gmail.com. Check us out on YouTube, KCSN Soccer, or via the KC Sports Network app. Make sure you leave us that 5-star rating and review. We'd appreciate it. And thank you. Again, if you are interested in helping in any way with the LA wildfires, I'll be continuing to share resources on my Instagram, or you can Google. There's all sorts of places. So appreciate all the people who have helped out there. But until next time, he's Dan. I'm Jimmy. We'll catch y'all later. See ya.
Thank you, Alan.